Hi Year 4, welcome to today's science lesson, which is all about solids, liquids and gases. For this lesson you'll need your exercise book, a pen or a pencil and a ruler. If you need to pause the video now to go and get your equipment, you can. Our learning objective that we'll be looking at today is we are learning to sort and describe different materials. Some of the key vocabulary we'll be looking at throughout the lesson are solid, liquid, gas, particles, state, material and properties. If there are any words that you are not sure of, we'll look at them as we go through the lessons so that you know how to include them into your activities and independent learning. So today we'll be focusing on these three states, solids, liquids and gases, and looking at the facts that a material may be in any one of these different forms. So before we can start to sort materials, we need to know what their properties are. So that means what makes each of those different states what they are. So for instance, what makes a solid, what makes that different to a liquid, and what makes that different to a gas. So for instance, the properties of solids are that materials in a solid state keep their shape unless a force is applied to them. So they cannot be moved, the shape cannot be changed unless you apply pressure to them. Solids can be cut, squashed or twisted. Now when they are squashed or twisted, they are changing shape, but they are only changing shape because you are applying force to them. They will not change shape on their own. So if you stand a solid on a table and you do not touch it, it will stay in the same shape as what you can see in front of you. Solid materials always take up the same amount of space. They do not spread out or flow. Solids do not have to be hard, they can be squashy or soft. So what are the properties of liquids? What makes them different to a solid? So materials in a liquid state take the shape of the container they are in. Although liquids can change shape, they do not change their volume. This means they still take up the same amount of space. So if you have 200 millilitres of a liquid and the containers that you tip them into are of different sizes, the amount that is in the containers are still the same. However, they may look different because of the sizes of the containers or the shapes of the containers. Liquids are pulled down to the bottom of a container by gravity, and liquids can flow or be poured. Obviously, how fast or slow a liquid flows or pours depends on the thickness or the thinness of the liquid itself. And to finish looking at the different states, we're going to look at gases. What are the properties of gases? So materials in a gaseous state can spread out to completely fill the container or room they are in. Gases have weight, they can be squashed, and they do not keep their shape. In your exercise book now, for activity 1, I'd like you to draw the following table. You may want to pause the video while you do this. Now that you have drawn your table, on the following slide there are going to be a selection of materials. If you want to go back in the video to look at the different descriptions, to look at the properties of each of the different states of matter for solids, liquids and gases to help you with sorting the pictures on the next slide, you can do that. Look at these pictures now and using the information that you know about the properties of solids, liquids and gases, sort these into the columns of the table that you have just drawn into your exercise book. On the next slide there are 2 examples of how you may want to present your work. You may want to present your materials in your columns using a picture with the name of the material underneath, or you may just want to write a list of the materials in each of the columns. It's entirely up to you. Pause the video now to complete your activity. Now that we know the properties that make up the different states of matter, we need to find out what materials are made out of. So scientists have found out over the years that materials are made up of very tiny little particles. These particles are ever so small that even our eyes cannot see them, and they even cannot be seen under a microscope. Now, each of the particles in the different states, the solid, the liquids and the gas, they all are positioned differently and behave in different ways. What you're going to need to do now is pause the video and follow the link below to watch a short clip on the position and behaviours of the different states. So for activity 2, you need to draw the table that is in front of you now, with the headings of the 3 columns: state, particle arrangement and particle properties. If you want to pause the video now while you do that, you can. Okay, now that you've done that, you now need to fill in your table. So starting with column 1, that is the state column. So in that column going down, you'll need to put solid, liquid and gas. In any order, it doesn't matter, you can start with whichever one you like. Then in column number 2, which is particle arrangement, you can see in front of you there are 3 statements. Particles are close together but random, they can move over each other. Particles are spread out and can move about quickly in all directions, and particles are closely packed in a regular pattern, they vibrate on the spot. You then need to match that one of those statements with each of your states. Okay? Then column number 3, particle properties, at the bottom you can see there are 3 squares with different circles inside which represent the behaviours and the movement of the different states. So one of them is representing a solid, one of them is representing a liquid, and one of them is representing a gas. Again, you need to match that up in the table so that eventually you'll have your states, solid, liquids and gases. The particle arrangements will be the statements that you've matched up, and then you'll have matched up your particle properties showing how your different states move. On the next slide is an example of what that might look like. So using the information from the previous slide, I've shown you how you might want to start presenting your work. So for instance, I started off with the solid state in mine. For the particle arrangement, I would find the statement that matched up. Obviously I've not written it in there because I didn't want to give you the answer, but it will start with particles are, then you choose from the statements that are on the previous slide. For particle properties, I've started to draw the behaviour or position of what the particles look like. However, I've not completed it because I don't want to give the answer away. So you might want to pause the video now to complete this activity. To finish this week's lesson, I've left you with a science challenge. That is, can you make a collection of materials and display them in the 3 groups of solids, liquids and gases? You can present these in any way, be as creative as you can or as you'd like to be. You can use objects that are large, objects that are small, anything you can find. Whilst you're doing this activity, have a think about, are there certain objects or materials that you collect that are easier to group than others? Which of the 3 states is most trickiest to group and why? When you have completed all your activities from today's lesson, please upload them onto Seesaw so I can comment on them. You've been great today, guys. Look forward to seeing you next week. Bye!